What's up everybody, this is the 2024 Mazda CX-90, and so about the CX-90 is this all new vehicle on an all new platform with an all new engine. It is really just from the ground up a clean slate designed for everything. And so as far as the looks here for the CX-90, it does replace the CX-9, and so it's grown a little bit to improve upon the CX-9. So it's about 2.2 inches longer, it's about 1.3 inches wider, and also a little under an inch lower. So overall it's just, giving you a little bit of a sportier stance. Everything's been stretched out a little bit. You also have lost a little over a half inch of ground clearance as well, so it's a little lower to the ground too. But I mean, it's just so good looking up front there. I love how you have the grille and the concavity to the grille there, and how you have the headlights with a little LED lights that blend into that grille, and the long hood proportions you have here thanks to the inline engine and the rear-wheel drive based platform here, even though all of these are all-wheel drive here in the States. But also coming down, you have these 21-inch wheels that look great. I love this inline-six badge on this little faux fender vent here. Now this one here has that inline-six engine, but there's also a plug-in hybrid available, which uses a 4-cylinder engine and an electric motor, and it gives you about 26 miles of electric range, as well as the same power basically as this turbo inline-six version. And so I'll be driving both in this video and comparing them a little bit. And just a really nice and unique look going towards the back there. You see how it kind of drops down, and you have a really thick D-pillar there, and it's really an interesting touch, but looks really good. And also out back there you see those taillights are nice and slender, look really good. And just from every single angle, I think they did a great job with the styling here on this vehicle. It really stands out. It's unique and distinctive, while still just also looking classy and honestly more expensive than the pricing would suggest. The interior in the CX-90 is also a very nice place to be. They made it basically roomier in every metric here inside compared to the CX-9. And so as far as up front here, it's really nice with this one having this tan leather with this Alcantara inserts. It's really cool with the quilting. Now there is also on these top trims you can get it with a grayish beige kind of leather. It's kind of like a white leather, and so you can get that as well. And that will give you like the hanging stitch on the dashboard there, and the fabric. This one has this microfiber suede kind of material here on the dashboard instead, but still very nice, very high-end premium feel. This one also has like this open pore wood. You could get the maple wood there again with that white leather, and of course there's a black leather option as well, but just so beautiful. And so this one we're looking at here is a top trim, so you have the 12.25 inch digital gauge cluster. And while that digital gauge cluster is standard on the PHEV and Turbo S, on the regular Turbo you get some traditional gauges mixed with a 7-inch display, unless you go for its top Premium Plus trim. You also have that paired up with another 12.25 inch display here for the touchscreen infotainment system. Now I say touchscreen because whenever you use Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, it is touch enabled, even hit speed, and I'm very happy to report that, because previously with Mazda you always had to use the controller. You still have to use the controller here whenever you're doing anything within the Mazda system, but that's fine because the way Mazda set up their infotainment system, they optimize it for the controller, and it's very easy to use the controller with that stuff. But it's so nice that for the smartphone stuff, which is set up to be a touch interface, you can now finally do it both when you're stopped and when you're driving. You can use that touch operation there for the CarPlay, and it's really nice they've added that. I think that really fixes all my problems I had with this infotainment system in prior versions of the smaller screens in other Mazdas. It's really well done now that you have that flexibility. Otherwise though, it's this typical Mazda setup here for the screens and the different menus. It's very simple and easy to navigate. I will say that the navigation isn't the most advanced navigation as far as a baked-in nav, but again, you have the smartphone integration, which by the way is wireless here in these upper trims, but you do go down to wired Apple CarPlay with a smaller screen. That smaller screen, by the way, is still a 10.25 inch display, so not small, and it appears that even that screen can do wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto once you go up to the preferred Plus trim on the Turbo or the Premium trim on the PHEV. But sadly, that smaller screen does not do the touch functionality for CarPlay or Android Auto. So if you want that, you'll have to go up to the Premium Plus trims of the Turbo and the PHEV, which are the only trims that get that bigger screen. On the Turbo S, that larger screen is standard on all 3 trims. One other thing though, the screen is paired up with this Bose 12-speaker stereo here in these upper trims too, and I gotta say, this stereo is fantastic. Mazda does some really good stereos, especially ever since this new generation of cars they came out with a few years ago, where they don't have any kind of bass drivers in the doors. They instead put them towards the footwell. And what that means is you have such clean, clear bass, and this also has the center point technology to give you a surround sound experience.
And I just have to say that it's right up there. I'd say maybe MDX Type S gives it a run for its money as far as impressiveness, but it's really this and that. I mean, I think this still blows everything else out of the water. And again, the mainstream competitors in the three-row market, this is certainly a better sound experience than all of those. Otherwise, though, coming down, you have your climate controls, and that's all nice and easy. I'm so happy to see so many nice hard buttons here so that it's, you know, not all screen-based like you're seeing with some other vehicles with their trendy interiors these days. This is, I think, really going to age better and really just nice and easy to use. And one little complaint I will say, though, is that these toggles for the climate control, I wish that I could just go up and down on one of them to, you know, increase or decrease the temperature, but instead I have to press down on the heat button to have the temperature go up while pressing down. See, it's a little counterintuitive, but that's a real nitpick. Otherwise, really great. And all the buttons, by the way, feel so nice when you press them. Mazda obsesses over little things like that to really make every little thing you touch and use feel really satisfying and luxurious. Otherwise, though, you also have this really nice new shifter, which is so pretty to look at and also just really great to use. The materials here with the leather and everything are so nice. You have the metal trim here for your drive mode selector and just the resistance to it. Everything just feels so top-notch and high quality. I also love how you have a padded knee area here on these, and it's like super thick, soft, plush material here. And so when you're on long drives, it's going to be really luxurious to have that, and something that a lot of other luxury competitors don't pad down here, surprisingly. Storage space is also really great up front here. You have nice large pockets in the doors. You have a wireless phone charger here in these upper trims, and then you have the two cup holders nicely to the side of the shifter. And you also have the center armrest, which splits in the middle, and you see a pretty shallow but a nice wide space in there, and a couple other USB-C jacks in there to be specific. I also really love this panoramic roof you have here. Not only is it just nice and big, but it also opens up so you can still have that open air feeling. Moving on to the second row here, we'll hop in and see about the space in here. I'm 5'9", and I still have lots of room in front of me, and the driver's seat, you know, wasn't up too far or anything. So I mean, I have lots of space here, nice and roomy. Certainly feels a little more spacious than the CX-9. It's a nice center console here, has some USB-C jacks once again, and you'll see there's heated and cooled second row seats here, which is really great. They have their own little climate control set up there. So great you have that. Also, this is the 6-seater configuration, of course, so you'll see you have the center console with the cup holders and their own little armrest and cubby. This cubby is nice and deep, though. This one goes nice and far down, so that'll be great for some extra storage there. Now, as far as the third row here in the CX-90, you still have a lever to open it up here. It's not a button like some of the competitors, so a little more work. You still have to, you know, physically push it forward yourself. Stuff like the Telluride, the Pilot, and the Palisade all have that automatic. It's also important to note that while this one is a 6-seater configuration, you can also get these in a 7-seat and an 8-seat configuration. The 8-seat configuration comes standard on the lowest trims of the regular Turbo and PHEV. When you get up to the premium trims of those two, you'll go to a 7-seat configuration like this one with the captain's chairs and the 3-seat bench in the third row there. Interestingly, the base Turbo S trim still is a 7-seater, but instead gives you the bench in the second row and then the 2-seater in the third row. The 6-seat configuration is standard on the other two Turbo S trims and is an option on the base Turbo S as well. So first off, here on the driver's side, I have the second row seat pushed as far back as it can go, and I basically, like, my foot isn't really able to be under the seat totally comfortably, but I do fit though. So I actually do have legroom here. I'm sitting up straight, and I do have some space here. So, you know, aside from my right foot, you know, just being on a little bit of an angle here, otherwise I do have good space here, even with that seat all the way back. But then if you can sacrifice some second row legroom here, then, I mean, I actually have space to put my feet here. I'm good, and I have lots of space. This is a huge improvement over the CX-9, and so that is going to be really great. Also, while you're back here, you'll see you have air vents here as well as USB-C jacks, and also cup holders here for those third row occupants. And I'm going to show you the headroom here, and again, it's a good amount. So, you know, this is really, again, a really nice improvement, and really shows you how they really tried to extend that rear line on the back to give you as much headroom as possible. And so again, being 5'9", sitting up straight, to have this much headroom in the back of a midsize SUV is very impressive. And so I think they did a really great job on this third row, all things considered. And you even have little handles here to help you hop out of the third row. And a little bit of a squeeze for an adult, but not too bad at all. And if you don't get the second row console, you can always walk through the middle too. Trunk space here in the CX-90 also appears to be pretty good, pretty much in line with most of the other stuff in this segment. Not much space under there. Some competitors do have a little more under there, but other than that, I mean,
good amount of space. You'll see that you have a regular power outlet as well as a house current plug there. And whenever you want to fold these seats down, it's not powered, but it's just one quick, easy, light lever. Very easy to do. And while cargo space is larger than the CX-9, regardless of which configuration you get, the 2-seat third row gets you 1.6 cubic feet of extra cargo space over the CX-9, while the 3-seat third row only gets you 0.6 cubic feet more space over the CX-9. So you get 1 more cubic feet of space in that 2-seat setup. All right, so setting off here in the 2024 Mazda CX-90. So the first thing you notice, well, I'm driving the Turbo S version here right now, and so this one has the inline-six turbocharged engine, 3.3 liters, and it's very rare that a car has so many new things on it. You know, this is a brand new engine for Mazda, a brand new transmission for Mazda, a brand new platform and layout for Mazda. The engines are now longitudinal as well, and so many big changes. So the first thing you notice about this, well, you hear a nice inline-six sound, and you know, it's something, if you're familiar with a BMW with an inline-six, you know, it has some familiar traits there for sure. Aside from the engine though, the other basic things you notice here in the CX-90. So first off, you know, it is a tiny bit wider and a tiny bit longer, but honestly it feels pretty similar to the size of the CX-9 from my recollection. It's been a couple of years since I drove a CX-9, but very, very similar, and visibility is really great, just like how it is in the CX-9. You know, you have a nice large windshield, nice thin A-pillars, great view out of the sides. You got the door mirrors there off onto the doors, not on the A-pillar, so great visibility there, and view out of the back is pretty good in typical three-row crossover fashion. And other things here, so you'll feel that the steering is a nice weight. Now, it doesn't change between different drive modes or anything. It's always just the one setting. Mazda likes setting things up for like one good setting. Same thing goes for like throttle response and stuff like that. But I mean, what you can say is just that it's just really direct feeling steering. This has a front steer setup, and I won't get into all the changes because there's a million and one little changes here they made for this vehicle, but basically the steering rack is set up so you have better steering feel and just better overall performance from the steering as well. And so it just means you have really great steering. But I also like, it feels a little lighter than the CX-50 to me, which I think was a little too heavy for my personal taste. It was a little overboard for a crossover, I think. This really seems to be the sweet spot. It really feels so good. Other things here, throttle response is good and quick for the most part. Now, one thing though, I'm leaning on the brakes here now. The brakes have the very Mazda feeling brake pedal, where they are a firm believer in not having your shin muscle do the braking, but instead have your stronger other, you know, calf muscles do that braking for you instead. And so what it means is that you have a pretty firm brake pedal, and you do have to put a little bit more muscle into it, but it's a brake pedal that's very easy to be smooth with as a result, because it doesn't bite down super quick or anything, but it's also not going to be razor sharp with its responses like you might be expecting out of, you know, a BMW or something like that sometimes have some pretty touchy brakes. These ones aren't super touchy, but they feel really good. And of course, they're nice strong brakes too. 13.7-inch rotors up front here, especially on the higher trims. The lower trims go down a little bit because of the smaller wheels, I believe. Cruising around though, you know, some elevated back roads kind of speeds here. Effortless amounts of power. This motor is so buttery smooth, and you don't feel any kind of weirdness from the turbo. It almost feels naturally aspirated, honestly, and just feels really strong here. I'm excited to push it once you get onto a back road, but for right now, it's just a really nice thing, and it's also nice and quiet. You can hear, I mean, I'm up to 50 miles per hour now. Really quiet, really smooth. I mean, this road is pretty nice and smooth here, but really refined, and yeah, I'm just really impressed. Obviously, you know, Mazda's going for the premium thing here with the CX-90, and they're trying to even, you know, elevate themselves beyond the regular mainstream SUV competitors in this segment, but I mean, it's certainly, I'd say, probably easily the quietest one from my recollection, without any kind of scientific testing, but it just feels really nice and quiet. So solid in here too, and the way that it, you know, soaks up bumps and just goes over everything, it really is so nice. There's no adaptive dampers or anything on any of these CX-90s. They all just have, you know, one good setup once again for the suspension. And the suspension, that's another thing here, you know, because they were able to go to the longitudinal engine, that gave them more room in the front there for suspension geometry. There's additional camber there, and also what it means is that you have a smaller turning circle than the CX-9, so maneuverability will actually be much better here compared to the CX-9 as a result. So I mean, it's not a drastic thing. It's not like you have four-wheel steer or anything like that, but it's still going to be a nice improvement because, again, they just had more to work with. Same thing in the rear there. It's a better better handling. It puts the power down better. It's better for towing, all those things. This motor with the Turbo S here, you can tow 5,000 pounds in these. The plug-in hybrids are going to be 3,500 pounds. All the things just get improved whenever you go to this rear biased all-wheel drive system. Now here in the States, we only get all-wheel drive systems for these vehicles, so it just means that you're going to have very confident traction. It does put power to all four wheels, you know, depending on the load and, you know, the setup and the kind of driving conditions you're in. But I put it up into sport mode here, and let's turn down onto this back road and see how it does. And here we go. All right, took it a second. Listen to that. Oh, that sounds really nice. Very good sound from this inline-six. Yeah, that's awesome. So it's a really unique sound. It doesn't sound just like any other inline-six. It's got its own unique tone and feels really good. So it's a 3.3 liter inline-six turbocharged engine. It has 340 horsepower, 369 pound-feet of torque here in these top Turbo S versions, and that's on 93 or 91 octane gas. Whenever you go down to the 87 octane, which it can run totally fine, it'll just knock you down to 319 horsepower instead. And so it's a very good amount of power, and so the plug-in hybrid also will match that power on regular gas, and whenever you put premium in that, it's only 323 horsepower, but that'll match the torque identically at 369 pound-feet in that one as well. And then in the lower versions, you'll get the same motor here, but it just runs less boost, so it does 280 horsepower and 332 pound-feet of torque. And there's no 0 to 60 times listed for any of these motors. Mazda doesn't really like talking about 0 to 60 times. They prefer to focus more on the G that you feel whenever you accelerate. But it's very, very quick. I'd say, you know, my guesstimate here, just seat of the pants, is it's somewhere, you know, around a 6-second 0 to 60, something like that. And I actually did drive the plug-in hybrid earlier this morning, and I will say that with the electric punch feels a little stronger off the bat. You'll see that reaction in a minute here, but driving this one after that, I think that actually feels a little faster from a dig, but then this one has a really nice, you know, amount of power delivery here in these upper RPMs especially. But yeah, and so it's running through this 8-speed automatic transmission. This is a brand new Mazda transmission they built in-house, and this transmission is interesting. So it uses a wet clutch, so there's no torque converter, but this transmission is a multi-clutch type of situation. There's various clutches, and it's planetary, and just it's got a bunch of stuff. It's similar to the 6-speed automatic that Mazda used to have, and still uses in other products, but has obviously some other changes and improvements. And they throw the torque converter, which also gives you more interior space here because it's a very compact design for this new transmission. And so as far as the performance of it goes here, you know, I'd say it's nice and responsive. I'd say that reaction times and feeling are actually pretty similar to the 6-speed, and so if you're familiar with, you know, like the 6-speed and the CX-9, you will probably be pretty familiar with the way this transmission is going to probably react. It's very similar tuning, in my opinion, with the way they set that up. And we'll go ahead and try some manual shifts. We do have some traffic here, so I'm not going to be able to go crazy, but all right, we're in first. And just doing like half throttle stuff. Okay, now we got some traffic opening up here. We'll go down to second. See, a little slow with the downshift. So, you know, I mean, this is, again, a 3-row family crossover, so I'm not expecting sports car performance. But if you are someone who's used to like BMW shift times and there's the F8 speeds, this is slower when you're doing manual shifts. Probably a small subset of people actually even use these paddle shifters, but if you are one of those people, just know that the shift times are pretty similar to the other Mazda products with the 6-speed automatic, just the way that it feels to me here. But it's a really nice transmission, and one great thing about it is you have this 48-volt mount hybrid system hooked up to it, and that also runs through the transmission. Everything goes through the transmission, so even the plug-in hybrid, all that stuff is all funneled through the transmission for those electric motors. But here with this one, I believe they said it's like a 17 horsepower little 48-volt motor, and so basically that just provides you with extended stop starting, some coasting, things like that. So, you know, very mild as far as this one goes. If you want the full hybridized thing, you're gonna have to go for the plug-in hybrid. But the important thing though to note is when you see that there's no torque converter, you might be nervous, like, oh no, does it feel like a dual clutch in traffic with the way, you know, inching up and things like that. But it's not unsmooth in my experience so far, and I'll keep an eye out for it. during the rest of my drive here this afternoon, but it seems to be really smooth, just as smooth as a normal torque converter automatic. All right, so now we got some good corners here coming up. We can test out the suspension a little more. And one thing with this wheelbase being 7.5 inches longer than the CX-9 gives you a much more stable and planted feel just right off the bat. And also one cool thing is they also transferred over the kinematic posture control technology that was originally introduced last year on the Miata. That now is present here on the CX-90. So what that will do is brake an inside rear wheel in order to give you a little bit of a better handling feel and a little bit of better cornering. And so on these corners here, we got some nice high speed limits too, and we got a tight one coming up here in a minute. But we'll be able to test out the curb weight because here for the Turbo S versions, one of these fully loaded ones is 4,899 pounds, so basically 4,900 pounds. All right, so now we got some really nice tight corners coming up. We can really push this a little more and see how it feels. And it feels really, really nice. Now, obviously, you do feel the weight. You are in a large vehicle. There's no mistaking that. You know, this isn't going to feel like an Alfa Romeo Stelvio or anything like that because this is a lot bigger and heavier. But as far as, you know, 3-row crossovers go, again, I think it is top notch. And it's just crazy that I'm able to keep the pace that I'm keeping here in this thing. And I'm not second guessing myself one bit. It's just doing it all without any kind of issue. And these brakes feel great too as I lean on those a little bit. But I don't even really need to use the brakes much because it does everything I'm asking of it. And even like that was a little bit of a quick transition there, and it's just still so well controlled. And I'm just gonna probably keep talking over and over about the same stuff, but it really, you got to take this thing on some nice corners to really appreciate this new platform and this new setup. And with this engine too, it's so buttery smooth. It just gives you power everywhere in the RPM band. It has a 6,500 RPM red line here, and but it's so meaty. Obviously, you don't even need to rev it out really. It just gives you power everywhere, and you're never waiting for a turbo. Honestly, it's still, I cannot even tell, you know, where the turbo boost is even filling in. You do also have a little bit of an electric fill in that they're doing behind the scenes a little bit, you know, with the 48 volt system, but it's very, very mild. You do feel more of that in the plug-in hybrid for sure. Some other things that help the handling are a 2-inch wider track roughly compared to the CX-9. So that's going to also give you some extra handling chops. You also, by the way, have 275 wide tires here on these upper trims. They go down to 265s on the lower trims, but here for these higher trims, most of the trims have 275s here, just normal like crossover tires. So I mean, even if you had a sporty tire on this, I think it would be even better. But you know, even just with ordinary tires, it's just the fact you have this platform that is just so good. Okay, so that was actually a little bit wet, and I was punching it coming out of that corner, and I mean, totally no issues with traction or anything. Did a really good job putting the power down there. And I also like that in sport mode here, the transmission is figuring out, you know, it's seeing the higher G's and figuring out that I want some higher RPMs because I'm doing some dynamic driving, and so it's giving me those right, you know, more aggressive gear setup and, you know, holding these gears. But man, yeah, and this is, you know, got a lot of undulations and off-camber bits and things like that, and it is still just slicing and dicing here in a 3-row crossover. It's almost 5,000 pounds. I cannot believe it. But yeah, this is really impressive, man. This is the advantage you get of going to this kind of platform. This is the kind of stuff that Acura and them wish they could do. And I don't know how Mazda justified this new platform from a cost standpoint, because it was not cheap, I'm sure, to do a brand new engine, brand new platform, completely switching, you know, the direction of the engines and everything else. I mean, so many big, expensive changes, and they justified it. And I gotta just take my hat off to them, because it certainly makes for an impressive vehicle that I think is going to become the benchmark for definitely everything else that this competes with, and even the stuff that's way more expensive than this. You know, it's going to be just really an interesting homework assignment for all the other car companies, I think, about what you can do. Oh man, this is impressive. Okay, so I actually felt, I think, the kinematic posture control there, because I could feel that it was giving me some extra little assistance there when I needed it, punching it out of that one corner there. But it is yeah, if you're an enthusiast, like Cliff Notes, if you're an enthusiast, just get one of these. Don't even crush up any of the other stuff, because I can tell you, everything else that I've experienced, at least, that even is close to the same price as this, and even stuff that's way more expensive, does not feel as good as this. It's not even close. This is like an easy win for the Mazda, in my opinion. Not even a tough competition at all in my mind. Hands down, best thing. And I mean this engine too. I mean, even if you go for the base version of the inline-six, you're getting an inline-six with a turbo, way more power, you know, as far as torque goes, even with that base motor compared to all the others this competes with, even in the mainstream segment. This engine is really snugged up right up against that firewall there, and it's not far off from being front mid-engine with just how far back it is, and that's partially thanks to this unique automatic transmission and the way that they're able to design that. But you know, even if you're just going for a normal people hauler, you know, people carrier, this is going to have just such more refinement because you have this platform and the way they space things out and the weight distribution and everything. It's just going to be so much better in all the ways. And so regardless of, you know, how much of an enthusiast you are, it's either, no matter how you cut it, it's going to be the superior choice, whether it's luxury year after, refinement, comfort, or the dynamic thing. It does it all, and does it all better, I could say, than basically everybody. All right, so setting off here in the plug-in hybrid version of the CX-90. So I'm starting off in electric mode here, and so this allows me to test out the electric range here. It does state about 26 miles of electric range, I believe. And so as far as the electric version goes here, I mean, it feels really nice in this electric mode. It will be pretty dedicated to basically staying in electric mode unless you hit the little kick down button there on the very bottom of the gas pedal when you're totally floored. That will kick you out of that EV mode and then put you back into normal mode. So you have to make sure that you go back in and then manually select EV mode again to put yourself back in that electric mode. But once you're in that electric mode, as long as you're not going totally flat to the floor, you know, otherwise it's going to give you a good bit of punch here. It's about 160 horsepower or so for the electric motor whenever you're just using that on its own. And also brake pedal, I have to say, nice and responsive here when you come up to a stop. There isn't any kind of weirdness with the regen or anything. And even though these versions weigh like 5250, I believe, for the curb weight, I mean, it still is pretty sprightly for the amount of power it's working with. And I'm able to do some really nice aggressive acceleration here in the fully electric mode, and it's able to do that, you know, really well. So I think it's a really well done electric mode. Whenever you are in the normal mode though, it will still display whenever you are in EV mode, and you know, it'll still prioritize the battery, but that has a lower threshold in normal mode, and it will kick on the gas engine if you go beyond a certain point, which you will see on your power meter there. It'll show you how far you can go before that gas engine gets requested. And also if you're a little too quick with your throttle tip in that normal mode, then it will kick on the gas engine, you know, pretty readily there. But in the electric mode here though, it really does do a good job of sticking with that, you know, electric power. And of course, it's so nice and quiet here. But we're coming off some corners here, and so I'm going to go ahead and put it into the sport mode actually, and this will kick on the gas engine as well as you know, giving you that electric boost to give you the maximum performance. I love how it changes the gauges as well here, so you have a much sportier look. And then you can really feel that electric motor filling in and giving you, it says on the gauge cluster here too, and again that goes into that boost mode there, but it's really nice power here. So with the plug-in hybrid version, you run Mazda's familiar 2.5 liter naturally aspirated Skyactiv 4-cylinder, but it's in a longitudinal setup here with this new platform again. And so because of that, you know, it's a little bit of a different, you know, orientation, but as far as the power goes, it does about the same amount of power as it does in the other naturally aspirated applications with Mazda. But combined with that electric motor, all total you have 323 horsepower, 369 pound-feet of torque. Yeah, it really is a strong combination of power here. I'm not wanting for power whatsoever, even again with the you know, heavy weight here of the plug-in hybrid and anything. It's really impressive. And by the way, this battery pack is a 17.8 kilowatt hour battery pack. It's also important to note that whenever you are in the electric mode, it is still providing power to all four wheels. And even if you run out of power from the electric motor, you're still going to have all-wheel drive. So unlike some of the others that have just an e-motor and there's no real connection, this has a physical connection to all four wheels, so you can always power all four wheels regardless of whether in electric mode and gas mode or in the hybrid mode. And that electric power does run through that 8-speed automatic as well. But anyway, we got some sweeping corners here coming up, and it just, oh man, I love the way this thing handles though. I mean, Mazda, I shouldn't be surprised. You know, they make some of the best driving vehicles in the segments that they compete in, and this is really no different. Body roll is very well controlled, and everything just feels so confidence inspiring. And I actually, the first time I went around in the very first corner in this, I was like, huh, this thing actually, it's really tight with the body control, like more than I was expecting out of a 3-row crossover. And despite that extra weight though, the plug-in hybrids have the same brakes as the regular CX-90, so you have 13.7-inch rotors here on these upper trims. Again, those lowest trims, I believe, go down to a slightly smaller brake there in the front, but they all just, you know, have plenty of braking action here. But let's turn down onto this back road here and see how it does. And just leaving it in sport and drive, here we go. Oh man, made my water bottle fall out of the cup holder there. Wow. And listen to that engine. That little 4-cylinder sounds really good. Wow, yeah, it is an impressive amount of power here in this thing. So there's really no compromise, honestly, aside from the different sound. But other than that, I mean, it's a different character, but with this electric motor being so strong and that 2.5 gas engine always being a nice, torquey, strong motor on its own, I love how it's so eager feeling too, especially here in sport mode. But it just feels so good in all the modes here, honestly. I'm just so impressed with the way this thing drives. And once the battery is depleted, it will always leave about a mile of range left in there, so that it will give you some electric boost still if you need that, and always wants to keep that in reserve. But otherwise, it'll just be like any other hybrid where, you know, whenever you're letting off of the gas and slowing down, things like that, it can kick off the gas engine, go back to that electric mode, but then you don't have any actual electric propulsion, again, until you either charge the battery with the charge mode or by plugging it in. But because it keeps that reserve of electric power, it means that even whenever you do run out of electric battery power here, it still has plenty of punch, even though you are just running, you know, a 4-cylinder engine here. You know, again, if you put your foot to the floor, that boost still does come on and give you that extra oomph. But otherwise, you know, this engine is still totally sufficient for normal commuting, and even if you're just using that engine, it still doesn't feel slow at all. I also have to add that whenever you're just cruising on the highway in the plug-in hybrid, it really is nice and quiet, especially if you can keep it in that electric mode, which it can do totally fine. We're doing 64 miles per hour right now, and you know, we're even climbing a hill, and it's just using the electric motor here, and it's so nice and quiet. That combined with just the, you know, great sound installation you have here in the, you know, Mazda CX-90 in general. Like, we just passed an 18-wheeler and you barely heard it. It's so refined, and the electric component here in the plug-in hybrid just even adds to that. One last little thing that I noticed about the plug-in hybrid version here is every once in a while, it's not consistent, but every once in a while, whenever I am kicking off the gas engine and it goes back into EV mode here whenever you're in the normal mode, I've noticed that every once in a while there's a little bit of a harshness where I feel like it's engaging a clutch pack or something, and you feel a tiny little jolt. That's the only little bit of unrefinement that I can notice from this plug-in hybrid setup. And now just cruising out on the highway here in the Turbo S, it's really nice and refined, and I mean, you hear the engine a little bit, but you hardly hear it. So honestly, it's basically just as quiet as the plug-in hybrid version, in my opinion, just how good it is. And one thing that this does have over the plug-in hybrid version, even the limited version of that, is this steering assist. And so as far as safety tech goes here, all of these come really well equipped. So any CX-90 is going to get automatic emergency braking, blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert, and radar adaptive cruise control are all standard features, along with a few other ones, but those are the main ones that are, you know, all standard. But some of the more advanced stuff, like it now has all CX-90s do have more advanced cameras and sensors now, and so those things will help it to just interpret everything going on a little bit better. And so you'll be able to see, like, for example, it visualizes really well here on the screen in the gauge cluster. Whenever you turn on the cruise control, it'll visualize, you know, what it's seeing around it. It even will show you how the road's curved and how it can see that the road's curved. And so it means that for these Turbo S trims, you get the option for this steering support button, which you don't get on the plug-in hybrid. And so that will do some more automated steering for you. Now, it is still a hands-on system. You still have to be paying attention and be doing the driving yourself, but it does do some really confident steering assist. It really does help you, and so it'll make some of those micro corrections, so you're not having to worry as much about those on longer drives. It'll, you know, give you a little bit less fatigue with some of that assistance. But whenever you go for a plug-in hybrid or one of the lower trims that don't have the steering assist, you still do have the basic stuff. But you know, if you don't go for one of these top Turbo S trims, though, it's just going to basically be a, you know, lane departure warning. It does have some kind of lane keep assist, but it's basically just giving you a nudge whenever you're going off the rails, and not giving any kind of lane centering automatically, again, unless you get these top trims. One last thing I'll add, though, about the highway driving here in the Turbo S version is that there is a little bit of unsmoothness here at low speeds that I'm picking up on now. So we're in this pretty heavy traffic trying to get back into downtown San Francisco, and especially at the lower speeds, I could feel it disengaging. There isn't really much of the clutch slipping thing you get with other dual clutches, but I can feel it engaging and disengaging still, and the transmission just makes itself known at low speeds. And that's something with a torque converter that all gets smoothed over for the most part, and you don't feel that in other vehicles. This, I'd say at, you know, speeds under 20 miles per hour, the transmission is still shuffling around all the time, and there's a little bit of unsmoothness there whenever you are at those low speeds. So I still don't think it is quite as refined as a torque converter whenever you're inching up in traffic like this. Now that we're up at a little bit of slightly higher speed, it's a little bit better, but whenever I was crawling up at 5 miles per hour just a couple of minutes ago, I was really getting some stuff. It almost felt like I was driving a good manual transmission, and I was driving it very smoothly. Kind of that sensation where you know, like it right there, it just kind of did a little bit of a jolt, a little bit of a hesitation. It's not torque converter smooth. I'm unfortunately having to report here, but it still is really good again in most driving. And if you want to get around this, just go for the plug-in hybrid version. With the way the electric motor goes through that transmission, I didn't ever have any kind of unsmoothness in the plug-in hybrid, at least with my experience with it so far. So I think that's the alternative. Go for the plug-in hybrid, and that makes the most sense if you're sitting in lots of traffic like this all the time anyway. You know, although this is turning off the gas engine intelligently to try and save some fuel, the plug-in hybrid is where this kind of stuff, where it really excels and makes a lot more sense. If you're sitting in stuff like this every day, I'd suggest going for the plug-in hybrid. And the last couple of things I mentioned here are the fuel economy and the pricing and how it compares to its competition. So first off, fuel economy. So for the regular turbo version, they're rated at 24 mpg in the city, 28 on the highway, and 25 combined. You go down to 23 in the city here for these Turbo S, so you just lose 1 in the city. And then if you go for the plug-in hybrid, whenever that battery is depleted, you get about 25 mpg in that one. But of course, whenever you factor in all the electric stuff, you know, you're gonna have a much higher MPGe rating. But the last thing to mention though is that pricing and how it compares to its competition. So including destination, these start just under $41,000. And then whenever you go up to the plug-in hybrid, that starts with the higher preferred trim versus just the select trim on the base trim. So anyway, as far as the plug-in hybrid goes, basically you're paying about $4 grand more roughly for the plug-in hybrid thing when you're comparing preferred versus preferred on the regular non-plug-in hybrid. So those start just under $49,000 for the plug-in hybrid. And then this Turbo S version, if you want the most performance here, they start at about $53,000. Now they do start with some higher equipment, so you're not starting with a base model. You know, as far as equipment goes, you get all the nicer features for the most part. But if you want a maxed out one like this one that I'm in here, these ones are going to run you just around $61,000, including destination. So they can get pricey, but again, whenever you're talking about stuff that has this much power, that handles as good as this does, that has the luxury features that this does, I mean, it's a pretty good bargain. Like I said, MDX Type S, for example, you know, a comparable one of those is going to cost you 70 grand. Now that has have some other things like some more advanced ambient lighting. You have massage seats in that, and you know, a couple other little things possibly. But you know, I mean, again, that's still just so much more expensive than even a maxed out version of this. Of course, if you go for like a BMW X7, which kind of competes with it, it's a comparable one of those is going to be 80 grand. And if you're looking at the plug-in hybrids, there's really not many competitors. But you know, the competitors that you do have, you have like the Lincoln Aviator. One of those is $80,000. And if you even, you know, you're looking at the regular normal midsize SUV competitors, most of those, like a Palisade Calligraphy, which I just had a few months back, that'll even run you about $54,000 for its top trim. But if you're not needing all this extra power, you can get that lower turbo version, but it's maxed out Premium Plus package. That'll run you right around $54,000. And at that price point, it basically is neck and neck with the Palisade, the Telluride, all those in their nicest trims. And this has most of the features that does. I think the Palisade, the only things it has that this doesn't are a heated third row and a massage seat in that Palisade as well, but it's a very limited massage, nothing advanced. But so basically, aside from those two features, this matches that on all the other features, and you're getting it for the same price, and yet you have more torque than those. Those have a little more horsepower from their naturally aspirated V6s, but this is going to feel much faster with the turbo. And of course, these handle so much better than the front-wheel drive based stuff from everyone else. And so, I mean, this is going to hands down be the best driver of the group, and you're not paying any extra for it. Again, if you can go for that lower horsepower version, and then, you know, if you do want, you know, the extra power, like I said, you can get into one of these with the most power for, you know, one of the mid-grade trims for, you know, basically the same or maybe a few $1,000s more than those loaded average mid-size crossovers in the non-luxury segment. And this is just so luxurious in here, really does compete more so with the luxury, especially the entry-level luxury stuff, and really beats most of those, like I said, the MDX and things like that. I think that Mazda nailed the pricing on this, really made it super competitive, and just basically made it an unbeatable value if you value the driving dynamic thing. If you don't value that, again, still go for the slower one, and you're still getting what I would argue is still a nicer vehicle in most respects as far as refinement, NVH, all those things. It's so much quieter than all the other competitors. I think it's still, even in that, you know, ordinary shopper, you know, person who doesn't care about the enthusiast thing, it's still going to be a top-notch value, and certainly one to check out if you're shopping in this segment. But anyway, that's all of my thoughts here on the CX-90. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Please also leave a like, comment, and subscribe to keep these videos coming. Huge thanks to Mazda for providing me here with this vehicle and this opportunity to review this vehicle for you guys today. Yeah, thank you all once again very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.